Here.
Councilmember McCarthy,
Here.
Councilmember Medina Dirksen,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Biala, Mayor Delgado.
Here. So there's 4 of the 5 council people, and Kathy is not going to join us tonight, as far as I know, but thank you everyone who is here with us. All right, we did not have a closed session, so we'll move right to the moment of silence and the pledge. If anyone would like to volunteer to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you very much, City Manager Lane Long. After a moment of silence, why don't you lead us?
Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Lane. So we'll now move to public comments, including any comments you might have on our consent agenda. And everyone in the public, you have 3 minutes, and then we'll move to the consent agenda. We have only one member of the public, Denise Turley. Welcome, and go ahead and proceed if you like.
Hi, thank you. Thank you to Anita for talking through my connection problem. We think we have got it solved. My question for you tonight is any city organization or affiliate offering me a Christmas lunch or dinner? Thank you.
Okay, Lane, did you note that question?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in the public? All right, we'll close public comment. And Heidi, with our new process here, does council have a chance to make public comment? Or did I skipped council and staff announcements? So let's go back one. And because I'm still not used to our new process, does council or staff have any announcements that they would like to make? Let's go to Council Member Elizabeth Vischer.
Yes, good evening, everybody. For the very first time, I attended the Dad's Read event at the Marina Library on Saturday, December 10th. And due to the rain, it was held indoors. It was extra special because Santa read a book, and afterwards photos could be taken with him. I would just like to thank the volunteers who organize this event every month. It is a great opportunity for families and caretakers with kids to not only enjoy the story time and to get refreshments, but also to exchange clothing that their children have outgrown. This is totally free clothing. The Monterey Food Bank usually is also there. Instead of the second Saturday, the next Dad's Read event will be held on Saturday, January 10 from 10 a.m. until noon at the library. There will be a DJ dance party. I highly recommend attending this event with your children or with somebody else's children. And thank you again for those awesome volunteers who make this happen in Marina. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Elizabeth. Let's go to Brian McMinn, our Public Works Director.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just regarding the MLK groundbreaking announcement, I don't know if you wanted to or make the announcement.
Go ahead, Brian.
Okay, so it is an item of award of contract on the consent agenda. This announcement's not necessarily related to awarding the contract, but the city is planning a groundbreaking ceremony on Martin Luther King Day to kick off the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. statue placement project at 2 o'clock, meeting at the Marina Library Monday, the 16th of January. So should be plenty of festivities and hopefully warm food there for people. So come on out for the groundbreaking on to memorialize the day and kick off the project.
Thank you, Brian. All right, let's go to Councilmember Christina Medina Dirksen.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to give kudos to all of the volunteers that put on the Winterfest, specifically our recreation staff and the volunteers. Tia did a fantastic job when I stepped in on Saturday to pick up my packet, and I unfortunately wasn't there, but we have an incredible amount of volunteers who step up and do these kind of things for our community. So a sincere thank you. And to answer to Denise Turley's question about food, perhaps who's doing the rec announcements? Is that you, Lane?
I'm not doing any rec announcements today. I think Mayor Delgado will probably talk about more on the event they had last Sunday.
Well, because there was a Marina Foundation, thank you to the Emersons and the board of the Marina Foundation that's having a senior holiday meal pickup. And this is with the City of Recreation, our city, that is going to deliver on Tuesday the 20th. Is that today? You're supposed to call 402-2947 for pickup on Friday between 11 and 2. And Daddy's City Diner is going to be providing 175 meals for our community. So everything from turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes. So a big thank you to the supporters of the Marina Foundation, Spring Hill Suites, and of course, Daddy's Diner and the city. So if you have any questions about that, Denise or anybody else, check out my Facebook page or check out Marina Foundation. And that's all I've got. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's go to City Manager Lane Long.
As everyone knows, our police chief, Tina Nieto, today is her last active day. She will leave the city officially on the 28th. And we were going to do a recognition little event for tonight, but she is unable to be here, and Commander Anderson is also unable to be here. And so we're going to do a recognition at another date in January when they're both able to be here, and we're able to officially say goodbye and recognize and celebrate not only Tina's 5 years being our police chief, but Commander Anderson, his 25 years serving the city of Marina in our police department. And so we want to say goodbye to them. Commander Anderson will be our acting chief until December 31st. But they've both done a phenomenal job, and we'll miss them. And our county is going to be in great hands with them. I was talking with the chief. Our two largest entities in the county have all taken our top people in Marina to run their police organization. So the county sheriff's office and the city of Salinas. And so it shows that we hire and we recruit and we train and we mentor very well in our city. And we'll update you a little bit later on our police chief recruitment. And that was it for that. So we aren't neglecting them. They just aren't unable to be with us tonight.
Right. Thank you, Lane. And in absentia, thank you to both Chief Nieto and Commander Anderson for the excellent job they've done devoting their time and energy to the city. Now, a little segue that Lane provided me was our former police chief, Roberto Felice, who's now the police chief of the city of Salinas, will be the guest speaker on January 18th at the Elks Lodge in Salinas. It's their police safety night. If you want more information about that, try to contact me, 277-7690. But also I wanted to follow up on what Christina Medina Dirksen, Councilwoman, began thanking the volunteers at the Winterfest and staff. So basically, she saw volunteers and staff peeling potatoes and prepping on Saturday for Sunday's Winter Festival, which ran from 11 a.m. I'm so sorry, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. And at that 3-hour festival outside, there was a mechanical reindeer, like a mechanical bull that throws you off. There was a sledding venue and some bounce houses. So the kids had plenty to do outside once they got full or before they ate. And then inside, the place was packed with turning over tables like a restaurant, but with hardly anywhere to sit, except it was just perfect. There was places to sit, but just barely. Tables were all full. Everybody's having a great time. There was good music. There was some dancing. Volunteers lined up doing the buffet, doing arts and crafts. Our former commander, Bob Nolan's wife, Nancy, was doing reindeer candy bars, and there were other gingerbread cookie decorating. Just great family fun. And so I hope next year when we do this again, we can try to get more people aware of it, because maybe with 4 months or so planning. Anyway, great event, winter festival, free food, buku food, really good food. Ron Powell, our recreation leadership team member, and Laura Johansson, and help me out here, Lane, Kathy Meacham, they're our leadership team in the recreation department. And so thanks to the staff, all the volunteers, it was just a great event. And then on December 10th, we had that really rainy day, 2.5 inches of rain fell in a 24-hour period. 40 volunteers showed up at Hilltop Park, our future city park at the dunes, and they planted 700 plants in 400 holes. So it was just a great day. There's somebody talking. Is it, everybody kind of mute themselves if you're, let's see, I think that might have been a member of the public. Okay, so thanks to the volunteers on December 10th, Shea Homes, they bent over backwards to prepare the site ahead of schedule, so we couldn't have done it without them. Citizens for Sustainable Marina were the host, and then CSU Embry, UCS Monterey Bay prepped the site and brought some people on that day. Great day, December 10th. Our next planting event is Martin Luther King Day, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Hilltop Park, 4th Avenue and 9th Street. 4th Avenue and 9th Street, out by sort of the Target shopping center not far. The very next day, December 11th, was a Sunday, and there were about 11 volunteers that showed up to pick up litter on a monthly event on Lapis Road, all the way down to the Beach Road roundabout. And that's why that area is staying so clean, from the Beach Road roundabout all the way to the dump on Del Monte Boulevard and all the way to the highway on Lapis Road. It's about 14 miles of roadsides and bike paths that get cleaned up every month by these volunteers. So thank you to Citizens for Sustainable Marina. And then Regen Monterey, formerly the Waste Management District, they pick up all the consolidated items that we consolidate, and they pick up all the bulky items that are too heavy for us to move. So it's a really good partnership between volunteers and the staff at the Waste Management District, and the County Public Works gives us all the free bags and tools that we need. And occasionally they bring heavy equipment to pick up heavy stuff as well. So it's really nice to have these partnerships that include volunteers to maintain parks and streets, and it's just great. All right, let's go back to City Manager Lane Long. You're muted, Lane, but it's
Denise's question. I don't know if this is the time to answer her question. All of Marina's activities we pretty much have done it. And so I'm not aware of other activities. I'm sure that there are other Christmas dinners going around, and even up until Christmas Day, but I'm not positive of any. If anyone knows, they can do that. But Marina won't be doing anything. The city won't be doing anything Christmas Day. That was last Sunday.
okay. So we will move on to our, thank you, Lane, to our consent agenda. We didn't have any public comments. Do any council members have any quick questions or quick comments, or wish to pull for deeper discussion? Anything? Go ahead, Councilmember McCarthy.
Yes, I would like just a couple questions about the council appointments, which I think is 8F1. So maybe we should just pull that and have a brief discussion.
It's up to you.
Yes, I'd like to pull that.
Okay. So that is 8F1
Thank you, dear.
It's actually 10F1.
and F1.
Thank you.
All right. No housekeeping. All right, let's go to Councilmember Christina Medina Dirksen.
Yes, I just wanted to comment on that matter as well as K1. I'm sorry,
Do you want to pull K1? or do you want to pull-
K1.
Okay, do you want
Um,
10 K1, do you want to pull it or do you want to make your brief comment?
I want to make my brief comments unless anybody else wanted to pull it.
Okay, oh, can you say that number again, please?
So sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
10K1.
When is it? H.
Okay.
Is it?
10K1 is what you said, and I looked at the wrong place. You said it right. So it's regarding the $48,000 for City Hall security improvements.
Yeah, I needed to make a comment on that unless someone else wanted to pull it.
Oh, go
Nope.
ahead.
Okay. My comment on this is that the brief background for those 7 attendees that are here, there was a First Amendment audit that occurred, meaning somebody came into our lobby and tested our boundaries of where they can go. And I just want to give kudos to Officers Aiello, Russo, Juan Sanchez, and Matt Mogeson, and our city staff, Carolina, for handling it so professionally. The link is out there. And essentially what this person did was test the limits. So I'm pleased that unfortunately we were caught off guard. Our staff did a phenomenal job. And the need for this $48,000 expenditure shows us, a breach in our security, and our staff safety is the number one thing. So I just want to give kudos for those who handled this unprecedented situation, and also recognize that perhaps we might have other areas of our city that we should consider the security boundaries and breaches. So that's what I have to say about that matter. So that's a $48,000 expenditure to beef up our security as well as our customer service procedures.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a scare, a very intimidating, threatening, potentially violent sort of invasion of our city hall, and our employees there went through some trauma in that experience, and the police did handle it excellently, as I've heard from various sources. So glad it's behind us, but it can happen any day, anywhere. Our doors are open for business, and people can walk through them and do mean things, and that's what happened that day. Okay, so this would be a good time to motion to approve everything on the consent except for the pulled item 10F1.
Question, does that matter go to, I'm sorry, through the mayor here?
Yeah, that matter will go to 13B at the end of the action agenda, but we have an item tonight that's kind of weird. It's as time allowed, we would get to 13B. And so this, I think, is appropriate to put before 13B. So
Okay,
would someone like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we accept the consent agenda with the accommodation of F1 moving towards the end of the agenda.
Yeah. So 10F1 would become 13B. And do we have a second?
I will second.
Okay. Any comments before we go to a vote? All right, Anita, can we have a roll call? Yeah. please.
Councilmember Vischer,
Yes.
Councilmember McCarthy,
Yes.
Councilmember Medina Dirksen,
Yes.
Mayor Delgado.
Yes. That motion passes 4-0 with those of us present unanimous. We're going to move to a very important item, our first action item 13A, regarding a discussion for urgent community facilities.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll be handling that item. This actually was a item that started last year, or I should say January, actually even before that, in 2020, 2019, 2021. The council has been talking for years about our facilities and the condition of our facilities, and trying to figure out a path forward that we can address replacing, repairing, and building new facilities. And in January 25th of 2022, we had a special meeting, and in that special meeting, the council gave direction for the city to really look forward, issuing perhaps a general obligation bond to build these facilities. And primarily the facilities that we're talking about is a new headquarter fire station. It actually be a second fire station. We've already have purchased and ordered a new ladder truck. It'll be 2 years for that to get built. But our facilities, our stations right now are not big enough, long enough to accommodate a ladder truck. And so that's a critical need of our community. And also when we look at the location of our stations, and I won't go into detail, our presentations, all our background material, explain those in detail, but from a fire response point of view, the location of your stations are absolutely critical. You want your emergency medical response, your fire response to be at home locations. You're trying to hit in the 4 to 5 minute range. And because of the location of our really primary headquarters station, which originally when the city was built out, it was in the center of our city, but now it's not. And as we've had all this growth to the south, those areas are way outside an appropriate response time. And so we've gone through an intensive fire study that identified really where the locations of our stations should be in the future to provide us the appropriate emergency response times. And so a new station needs to be built in the California Avenue Engine Road location. And then eventually our headquarters station is on Palm. That needs to shut down and needs to be relocated closer to Beach Road, Del Monte, in that area. We don't have an exact location, but it needs to be in that area. And those will provide us the ideal response times. But either way, we need to build a second fire station. And the cost of that is about $17 million. It's quite expensive. And the other need that we have is just for our general city facilities. When our city was incorporated in 1975, it brought in these temporary portable units and attached them together, which are great. And the plan was to use those temporarily and then move forward on a path to build a city facility. And then when our general plan was adopted in 2020, it actually identified and it put as a top priority the construction of a new city center civic facility, and it actually identified locations for that. And that was 22 years ago. And so as time has gone on, we have not moved forward with the plans, and these buildings are way beyond the point to where if we repair them, we're going to have to put in significant $10 to $15 million to repair them, and then we're still going to have these buildings that are 55 years old, and that doesn't make sense. And so, as a community, we need to build a new community center, civic center, and along with that would be a police station, because our existing police station is 20 plus years old and doesn't have all the facilities that we need to be able to operate. Doesn't have the storage, doesn't have the evidence lockers, and the ability to house our staff in ways that we can operate and function how we need to. And so the plan was to build a new city community center complex that would include a police station, city hall, our planning and community development areas also incorporate a senior center and really community facilities all in one building. The cost of that is estimated probably around 25 to 30 million. Again, those prices just change. But when you look at those two facilities, it was estimated the cost is about $50 million. And the thing is, cities never are able to save up money to build facilities like this. If you try to save up money, the cost will always increase faster than you're able to save up money. And so the way that cities build facilities is they go out and bond for these major improvements like this. And that was the path that council directed the city back in June. They said, let's go ahead and put it on the November ballot. And we worked out ballot language. And then as we reached out to professional groups that help in these outreach efforts, everyone that we talked with said they did not recommend that we move forward. And they based this on the results of a survey. We did a statistically valid survey, and it came back extremely positive, and that survey is attached to our staff report. But a general obligation bond requires a 2/3 majority threshold, and that's a very difficult threshold to reach. If we were shooting for majority, we would have gone to the voters last November. But all our consultants looked at that, and they said they did not think that we'd had sufficient outreach and community education efforts to where they felt comfortable that we could hit that 2/3 threshold. And the bottom line is we don't want to go out to the voters for a ballot measure if we're not confident that it's going to be approved. The last thing we want to do is put all these efforts in and have it go down. And so after talking with our consultants, they recommended that we hold off on the November ballot. We came back and told that to the council. The council said, okay, fine. We're busy with other things. And the direction of the council is bring this back and let's start this whole process again for 2023. And so this is now bringing this item back before the council to see if the council really wants us to start this process again. The proposal is to give us direction to bring a consulting contract to you at our next meeting in January, which will be January 18th. The public outreach, the education efforts, these require a level of expertise, and there are firms that are dedicated strictly to ballot measures like this. And so we want to get see if council wants us to move forward in this direction, and if so, we'll bring a contract back. Now the opportunities for an election, since this is an off year, it's an odd year. We have the ability for a special election in May, or in August, or in November, or we can wait until 2024, and you'll have your primaries, I believe, in March 2024, and then you have the general election in November 2024. And these are things that the consultants, as we bring them on board, they'll talk with us, and what they will help us develop is mailers and different education materials to outreach to the public. And as we go out with our first round of outreach, and then we'll hear back, and then we'll come back, and then based on what we hear, we'll probably go out with another mailer and say, okay, we've reached out to you, we've heard what you have to say, these are your questions, and then go out to them again. And we'll go through this process several times. And once we get to a point where we feel confident and that our public wants us to move forward, then we'll probably do another survey again, similar to what we did before. And that will give us a really good statistically valid sense of exactly where our voters are. And then at that point, then we'll come back to the council and see if you want to put the measure on the ballot for a special election or election in 2024. Now, one of the things that's critical in this process is prior to council giving direction to put a measure on the ballot, you have much more discretion to advocate for a project. So as a city and as staff, we can do a lot more on advocating for these projects and why they're important to the city. Once you make the decision to put it on the ballot, then the rules change dramatically, and the city can't be out in front and can't advocate as much. And that was part of what our consultants told us last year, and that was part of their recommendation to us. Was they said, look, the council's has voted, put this on the ballot, you can't advocate anymore, and you won't be able to do the outreach and that you need to do to pass and hit that 2/3 threshold. And so we have the ability to do much more advocacy with the consulting firm on board to help us do that. And so that's what the item is before the council. See if you want to pick up where we left off last year, bring a firm on board, and then they'll just work closely with you as we design and put together our outreach and our educational efforts. That concludes my report.
I have a couple of questions. The facility I'm most concerned with urgently is our city council chamber, because soon we may have to meet in person, which is a good thing, but we need to have a facility. So when do you think we'll need to meet in person? And does this cover that, or do we have to find the money with where the budget we already have?
This is a project that Matt has been working on. We've gone back several times on the council chambers, just trying to figure out bare bones to meet ADA improvements and things like that. And every time we come back, it ends up costing $450, $500 to $1 million plus. We do think that probably in March, we will need to go back to having live in-person meetings at the council chambers. And so Matt is working right now on getting our technology updated so that we'll be able to continue our Zoom meetings while we're meeting live in the council chambers. But as far as actual improvements, we are not, we don't have any major of those planned.
Okay. So aside from our agenda item, I hope that we look into alternative locations like the library, Vince DiMaggio Park, the community center, Marina Coast Water District, where they used to meet with us. Now we can meet at their place, aside from the city council chambers, because I can't see that we'll be ready by March to be in there. So it'd be nice to have an alternative backup plan. My more relevant question, I do think that we're going to find that 2024 gives us the amount of time we need to make improvements that are visible, so people are inspired to vote for new facilities. And we're going to have so much progress going on with street sweeping, street repairs, new parks, blight removal. These are big positive progress steps. And so a consultant would be very busy in the next 2 years advising us on how to get the information out so people know what's going on before we hit them with a request to do more. So I would hope that we do employ a consulting firm ASAP, but that we don't do it expecting we're going to be March or June or September of 2023 with a ballot measure. Maybe that can happen, but I think we should also be anticipating what a consultant can do for us that staff lacks the time to do, to be a public relations firm, because I don't see anyone in staff having oodles of hours to be that public relations firm that this consultant could be for the next 18 months before things change and it goes on the ballot ahead of the 2024 November election. So I guess my overall question is, can we proceed as recommended with the understanding that it might well be 18 months of outreach to the community instead of just 6 months getting ready for March or 9 months getting ready for some other 2023 date?
Yes, Mayor, and you really kind of hit it on the head of where I think the consultant will be advising the council is they'll be looking at that and if they, based on the initial outreach and the feedback, if they think that it's too early in 2023, that's exactly what they'll be doing. They'll say, you know, the support isn't there. You need more outreach. We need to educate the public. They need to feel better about these issues. And that's exactly what they'll do. They'll come back and they'll say, yeah, we recommend you wait till 2024, the primary or the November election. So that's exactly what the consultant will do. their goal is to advise us and work with our community on the outreach so that we get to a point where everyone is comfortable that yes, this will pass on the ballot. And what we don't want to do is rush it, like you said, to a May or an August election when the community just isn't behind it, or the support isn't there yet.
All right, and you and I talked about this last week, and I emailed before the meeting that it would be important for the consultant to help us with a stepwise outreach, so that maybe first we go to the Friends of Marina Library, the Rotaries, and the Lions Club, whatever groups, to get sort of those feedback from those groups before we go to all the individuals, having the feedback from the groups in our back pocket before we outreach to the individuals, so we kind of figure out what the groups are telling us they want, because there are a lot of our community leaders before we go to the at-large population. So is that something that we might do?
Absolutely, definitely.
Okay.
And it's
But
key
after-
to the process.
Okay, and that kind of nuance or detail, we would get there later at a public meeting, council meeting, once we had the consultant on board and the scope of work ironed out.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Councilmember Christina Medina Dirksen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, City Manager, for that update. My question goes to constituent, and I'm just wondering, with the survey that we had, would we have to do it again? Because we were in a very different place. We're on the foot of the recession when it happened. Would we do another survey? And secondly, what are our boundaries with bringing in, say, employee groups, unions that might be benefiting and I can't wait to get our new councilman have to say, being fresh from the campaign trail.
And, Christina, you might consider turning off your video because you're not 100% flowing, but we got pretty much most of
I
what you
paid
said.
a lot of this internet at this hotel.
But maybe without the video, it might work better. Lane, did you want to respond?
Yeah, so yeah, we definitely, I'm probably reversing your order here, but it really is important that we engage with all of our employee groups, and they are absolutely a critical part of this process. Not only that they need to understand, we need to work with them, yet they will have great ideas on these facilities, and so yeah, they are definitely a critical part of that process. And then your first question was, I draw a blank here. What was your first question? It was
here I am. Had to do with what are limitations on bringing in employee groups or benefiting like special interest groups that had to do with do we have to do another survey?
Oh yeah,
because the conditions might be different. Where we were we not in approaching a recession, and the concerns about inflation? Might we have to again, and might that affect the bottom line of how much it's going to cost us?
Yeah, the survey will cost about $29,000. That's what it cost last time, and you will definitely want to do a survey again. Anyone that runs an election, before you make the final decision to pull that trigger, you'll want to do a survey, and that will give you your best sense. So we'll definitely still want to do that.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Christina and Lane. Let's go to Councilmember Elizabeth Vischer.
Yes, I would like to know, since the construction of new facilities will be years away, how long can the current facilities function until major investments are necessary?
That's the trick.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to be sinking millions and millions and millions into these facilities if we believe that we are on a path to rebuilding these facilities. But yet there are some critical things that we know that we are just going to have to do. And like the one today was the $48,000 to make these safety and customer service improvements. And we know that we will have some of those, and those will be hundreds of thousands of dollars. But if the council wants to move forward and the community wants to move forward with the construction of these facilities, we won't be bringing forward plans to make major renovations of $5 and $10 million. We just won't do that.
Okay, thank you. I know it's a balance always. It's tricky.
It is.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Councilmember Brian McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to uplift the mayor's comments on timing. I think that the value of having an education, a longstanding education piece is definitely there. And the other thing I would add is that it's certainly possible we may want to call a special election for some other issue in the next year. And if that should happen, I think we should be nimble enough and ready to reevaluate and say, hey, maybe we weren't going to put this on the ballot before, but because we're running a special election for some other issue, there may be some value to doing that. So that's all I would ask, is that if we do look at a horizon that's a little bit longer out, that we stay nimble enough to say that if things change and we call a special election for something else, we can reconsider whether or not to put an issue like this on that ballot.
And the good part of that, along with what you mentioned, is as far as the general obligation bond and the ballot language and the resolutions and all that stuff, we pretty much have those put together from last year. And so if we're still going down that same type of path, I think we can be nimble and quickly respond if we need to, just because we've created a lot of that, and we aren't going to be looking at trying to redo that, although we certainly will be exploring other options that may be available this year or next year that weren't available last year.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Brian. Let's go back to Councilmember Elizabeth Fisher. No, okay.
Sorry, I forgot to lower my hand.
Let's go to the public, and then after public comment, we'll come back for a motion, more discussion, and a final vote. Does anyone in the public, there's 12 members with us, please raise your hand and we'll select you. First come, first serve. Anthony Goncalves, Justin Noor. Let's go to Justin Noor. Sorry if I'm not saying it right, Justin, but welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council member.
Good evening.
Is my audio okay?
Perfect.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I spoke during the last meeting about flooding on my street on Marina Drive, and I just wanted to follow up on that. And in case
Justin, the public comment for those kinds of issues was before now. Now we're asking for public comment on the proposed new facilities bond measure.
I'm sorry, I jumped in late tonight. My
It's
apologies.
okay. And I think our city manager heard you, even though it wasn't quite the right time. So, please contact staff, Public Works, or city manager, and he'll refer you to Public Works to continue discussion that issue, Justin.
Okay.
Don't let it go. It's going to rain again. So, okay. All right. Anyone else wishing to speak, please raise your hand. Let's go to Tommy Bolea. Welcome, Tommy.
Good evening again to all, and happy holidays. Yeah, I just think you guys should look straight west from your existing buildings and look at that building. I mean, it's a gold mine, and you could do it for millions of dollars less. You don't even need a bond. You can use your city funds to do this. And you can, next to that building, you can move the fire department on Del Monte. Bam, you got it right there. It's a cost saving measure. I think and then the existing fire station, you could turn that all into a planning department, development department, whatever you want. That building can be reused. The word is reused. And you want to spend millions and put the city in debt and have us pay it back. I just think it's it's irresponsible, first thing. I mean, that building is right there on Del Monte. You can add another floor. You can make that whole area redesign that whole area. I just don't get it. Anything new that you guys want to build, you want to build in the new part over there in the south and leave us blank. I mean, it's a good idea, but what about the other part of Marina? I mean, it's beautiful, but it's going down. We need to bring it up. But anything new that you guys want to build, you want to build in the new development. Well, I kind of understand they pay more property taxes than us, but it wasn't like I twisted their hand to buy those homes. They bought them. They knew well that they were going to pay high property taxes and HOAs. But I just think to get a survey and then go out to the public, I just think it, and then you're probably going to have it in English only, which I think is kind of, I don't know what word I want to use, but it should be in multiple languages because Marina is a melting pot. It always was, and it always will be. And I love that. I love that different diversities and learning cultures, learn a word from a different language. But if we're just going to keep it at the top level in one language, hell, my mom, when she came here, she didn't speak English. We had to teach her what a stop sign was. Day by day, we taught her. She learned English on her own, and she went on to become a citizen. I mean, you got to start from somewhere, but you got to get us. It'd be nice if we were all part of this community. And even if you didn't speak English, have different ad hoc groups or whatever. But if you're just going to go get a consultant, here we go again. Okay, thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much, Tommy. Let's go to Karen Anderson. Good evening, Karen.
Good evening. My question is, since part of the reason for needing a new fire station is that the ladder truck will be too long for the current one, is where are the tall buildings in Marina? Because to me, it looks like they are relatively close to Del Monte Boulevard in downtown, that new apartment building for the students, and then that new one that's not built yet or anything, but was approved some months back is further out on Del Monte Boulevard. So how close to the tall buildings would the ladder truck be, is my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Let's go to Denise Turley.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
From the comments tonight, it's obvious that a lot more education of the public has to go on this. I know our fire response times here are over limit, even though there's a temporary fire station at the airport. My question would be is, how tall does the opening have to be for a ladder truck? Anyway, just further study obviously needed, and further public education.
Denise,
Thank you.
when you say opening, how tall, what opening are you thinking?
The obviously you want a fire station to park the truck inside the building. How tall does that have to be so the truck actually fits in a building? Is anything smaller than an airport hangar gonna house the truck? Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Denise. Anyone else before we close public comment? We'll give everyone a moment. Okay, we'll close public comment. Karen asked, what's the relative location of the tall buildings that need to be served by a ladder truck and where the ladder truck will be housed? And I recall that our fire chief, Doug McCowan, told us a while ago, recently, that it's not just the tall buildings, but to extend over small buildings like happened at the Reservation Road fire recently. A ladder truck was used from another jurisdiction. But Doug, can you handle that question?
Yes, thank you. You're right. So any building over 2 stories tall, we don't have the capabilities to make access to it. So we have the 3-story hotels, we have the promontories, we have the VA clinics, and we also need it for the large box stores such as Target, Best Buy. If you go down Reservation Road, the shopping centers, all the shopping centers, all those buildings. We have quite a few buildings scattered throughout the city where we need that. So the discussions were that we were going to put the fire truck in a new fire station, which would be located closer to California and Engine in that general area, which would make it pretty much centrally located to go out through the city. And to follow up with Denise's question, she asked about how tall is the opening. Well, the truck is designed to make legal height, which is 13 feet 6 inches or under. So the opening needs to be 14 foot for the opening the door. So it's really is not so much the opening, it's a pretty standard opening height, it's the length. And I'm trying to remember exactly how long the trucks are, about 36 feet to 40 feet long. And there lies the problem is our current door, like at Station 1, it goes high enough to get it in, but it doesn't go deep enough to park it inside a building.
Do you know if it does, Doug?
It does not go inside the building at Station 1 because of the length.
I know we have a Hampton Inn about to open. We have a Ramada Inn downtown. So those are high buildings. We approved a 4-story apartment complex next to post office, hasn't been built yet. So yeah, even the taller buildings are scattered about Central Marina as well as Fort Worth Marina.
Right. We have one down on Del Monte that's been approved too, right down there by, we have that whole north end of the city, plus we have the schools. Can't forget our schools. We have all the buildings there, and there's actually, quite a few buildings. It's not just the tall buildings. And it was a great example, that fire on Reservation Road. Didn't get put out till we got trucks on it, be able to get that aerial water stream, master stream going in there. So, and we were building, then we have some of the residential areas, which are so tight. Sometimes we can't even get in our multi-story buildings. You can't get a ladder on multiple sides. So depending on where the fire's at, your only option if somebody's trapped or anything in the upper story is to get the truck in there.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, so let's come back to council. Does anyone have any comments they'd like to discuss or questions before we move to a motion? Go to Councilmember Brian McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple quick comments. One, to kind of follow up with Tommy Baleo, who talked about perhaps purchasing other properties and expanding the current campus. And I'm sure staff has kind of looked into some of those solutions, and the possibilities are probably limitless. But I'm wondering, one, if staff could say anything about that in particular proposal. I mean, that building's probably not even for sale, so I'm sure that's complicated. And then the other thing I just wanted to say real briefly is that there are items in this list that may otherwise be prioritized by some other means, is my understanding, right? So for example, a code enforcement officer, which is something I have long advocated for. If we don't pass a bond measure, that doesn't mean we don't get a code enforcement officer. It just means the funding doesn't come from that mechanism. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then just the other piece about the other possibilities of expanding the campus. I mean, can you share anything about what staff has looked at, or is that kind of too big of an open-ended question?
No, it's not. I think it's a good question to ask. Like the building next to us absolutely would not work at all for police station. You'd have to level the whole building down, and the site's not big enough. There's no parking. You can't. The access isn't there. Plus, the existing building has existing leases. I don't know how long those leases are with the existing tenants. And so that building is not even an option at all. But we've looked around town, and your police stations, your fire stations, your city facilities, they really are unique facilities in design and how they operate, what their requirements are for space, parking, access. And the advantage that we have here is fortunately, we have vacant property that the city owns that gives us the ability to look at that. What we've learned about, especially renovation costs, unless you're just doing nominal interior type renovations, it's usually cheaper to build than renovate. We went through that analysis with the old Army barracks that are on our Dune City Park. And the plan has always been to restore those. Initially, it was 6 of them, and it's down to 3. And after we brought in several people to look at that, they said, rather than restore the existing building, it's far cheaper to level it, and rebuild an exact identical replica is still far cheaper than restoration and renovation.
Okay. Thank you, Lane. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, let's go to Councilmember Elizabeth Fisher.
Yes, just one question. It seems that the new ladder truck will arrive before the new fire station will be built. So what are the plans to park it while we're waiting for that new fire station?
Good question. Well, we're working on those options and alternatives yet. We have several things that we can work on. So we won't be caught short there.
Okay, you still have time, yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Lane or Chief McCowan, can you give us a couple of examples that might be on the short list?
Sure. Go ahead, Chief.
We know that like there's temporary structures that we would, so when we get the truck, we're going to have a 6-month period of time where we're training, outfitting, and everything else. So if we had a temporary structure, we would probably put it in that. It's like a RV tent style tent. You probably have seen some of those. We would probably have to find, keep it out at the airport. And we have, a few other options that we're working on, but we definitely don't want to have a piece of equipment like that sitting outside. That's the last thing in this kind of environment.
All right, thank you, Chief. Let's go to Councilmember Christina Medina Dirksen.
Thank you. I will ask one question at a time. Number one, back on to Chief McCown and our airport manager, if he's here. Are some of the hangars at the airport able to accommodate the ladder truck?
If they can as far as size, but as far as our FAA regulations, no. We're required to put in aeronautic uses before you can have non-aeronautic uses. And so, we just couldn't take away aviation hangars and put in non-aviation uses.
But do we not have a fire station out there, which is a non-aviation use, or is that like a special use?
Correct. That was originally the fire station out there, and so that was converted into that. But if we're to take hangars that are aviation uses and use those for fire trucks, we can't do that.
Okay. Second, how about the property that we do own next to the dunes that was the original fire stations?
So those are that's one of the options that we are considering and looking at. So we have several out there, and over the next year and a half, we'll continue to pursue and work out what makes sense, and from a cost perspective, what makes sense.
Okay. My next question is, if we were to pursue a bond measure for these facilities, would the new location near the library be subject to CEQA or some kind of coastal zone requirements? Or are city entities exempt from that? Would we have to go through environmental review?
Yes, we would.
And what kind of time frame would that tack on?
Um,
have we done any work yet since this was identified as a property long ago for a potential expansion of our civic center?
No, we haven't started any of that review. You'd have to have your plans and details and things like that in place before you start your CEQA review. We don't think that that will be an issue or problem as you go through that process.
So is that done in tandem?
Yes, we will. From a timeline, yes, we will try to, with our timeline, move concurrently as many different things as we can.
So can you confidently say that this coastal zone location would not be an impediment to our plans?
Yeah, I don't see any impediment on our existing plan location at all.
And Lane, one note is, I think it's outside the coastal zone, so it would not be a it wouldn't be a California Coastal Commission issue.
That's correct. Where that current site is outside the coastal zone. We still would have to do our secret review, but we don't see any problem with that.
Guido, did you have input? I can't tell if that's a photo or, oh, that was a photo. I thought you came on live, and that's why I asked.
I do not. I mean, the CEQA process would just be run concurrently and we would just do our standard review. So.
Okay. That's good to know.
Photo, it
My
looks live. Go ahead, Christina.
next question had to do with if we think about the number that we're looking at, does it also include for our facilities things like technology upgrades and equipment and furnishings, maybe some more hard costs? Or is that extra? Or is
No.
this just like the whole thing?
That's a turnkey. That would include all the facilities, all the technology, all the equipment, all the furnishings. So yeah, nothing would be on top of that.
Okay. Next question is, what would happen to the property that we currently are using for these facilities? What would happen to the police
That's
portables?
That's a great question. I think we will have to have some discussions with council on options for that. We could potentially look at it selling that property. We could reuse it. There's a lot of options that we could do with that. But it's kind of wide open at this point. One option certainly is to sell it and use some of those proceeds to help to fund the new facilities, or maybe other
Affordable housing,
facilities.
perhaps?
Or what?
Build affordable housing, perhaps.
It would be wide open to what council could use that for.
Okay. The last point I wanted to make is I wanted to welcome Richard Cox onto this phone call. And I believe we have another acting commander. Yeah, acting commander Richard Cox. What, if any, impact is having a police chief that's leaving us, a new interim joining us, going to have on pursuing this matter? So my concern is if that we went sooner, we wouldn't. I know that they've been on with us for many years, but a concern that I have is with new leadership, perhaps is there a learning curve? And what role do they have in this process as director heads, I guess, acting director heads?
Yeah, all of our directors and really employees will be involved in these processes, but we will be, you typically will hire architects that have expertise in designing police stations, fire stations, city facilities, and we'll actually rely a lot on their expertise and a lot on their knowledge of the latest technologies, the latest techniques. What we'll rely on the expertise of our staff is what are current trends going on, what are long-term trends going on for staffing, for how you want to utilize the facilities, and we are going through changes right now. A good example is some positions working more time at home, and so you'll have a lot of input. Hopefully we'll have a new police chief on board well before we're to that point in this process. So I don't think that that would be a challenge or a concern right now.
Okay. Last question, Mayor. Is this just comments, questions, or the last?
Let's,
bite of the-
it's both, but let's come back to you because I think that we've got that
Time's
5
up.
minutes.
Time's
We'll
up.
have a second round.
Thank
All right. I just wanted to comment on some public comment that indicated we were focusing on new marina and not, that is the Fort Ord portion, and not the central marina. But we're talking about a fire station. We're talking about a community center, city hall next to the library, which is both are in central marina. We're talking about a new police station, which would be in central marina. And the only thing we're talking about that would be on the new part of marina, which is Fort Ord, would be a second fire station to serve the southern half of our city. And then English only, it has not been the direction that we have employed the last several years. We do things in Korean and Japanese and Spanish when these are important issues like postcards going out in the mail or flyers that we make for upcoming community meetings. So that's a good point. We want to stay away from English only. And I think the city has done that pretty well in the last several years. All right, let's go back to Councilmember Christina Medina Dirksen.
Thank you. These were just some observation I wanted to make. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I had the pleasure of having coffee with some members of public safety recently, and I toured the building. And I urge all council members and members of the public who are able to, with permission, to tour the building. Some of the things that reached my concern were, various things from the inability to have a functional work break space / cooking space, to bathrooms that were had not been improved in many years because of the fact that we have been putting this. If anybody, I just wish that we could do a virtual tour, would tour our building, you would see that it features a fire trap. Hallways are very close. There's no windows. Again, the bathrooms and the women haven't been upgraded in years. There's a lack of space. I just worry that I'm sure that our fire systems work adequately, but I really have a dire sense that we need some improvements there immediately. Out of the airport and that fire station, whether it is, it probably does its work, but I'm just really concerned about the conditions that our workers work in, to exposed wiring. I've toured the portables. I go in and get my packet on the regular. They're not well insulated, the sound insulation, and we just saw from this of the First Amendment, I really fear for the safety of our employees. So I give kudos for bearing with us, and you deserve so much more. It's just a shame that we have not had this conversation and have been afraid to have this conversation because of the concerns of tax increases, and nobody likes taxes. But unfortunately, our city has been at the has felt the brunt of not enough money to ask or justify. So I can't wait to hear from, again, new council members right off the campaign trail, as well as our employee group who have to who serve us as best as they can under the conditions that they work in. So I look forward to doing whatever I can to answer any question about this. Our city employees and our city deserves better facilities. No question about it. And I'm just sad that the costs for these kind of things have increased over the years. So I guess that's with moments, but I'm going to ask that perhaps we do some sort of virtual, sorry, I'm in a hotel room here, some sort of virtual showing of, and I took pictures, I will post them on my Facebook page later, some sort of real-time conditions, because it's easy to say we need things and we appear to be fat or we appear to be luxurious. And I assure you, residents of Marina, we are not luxurious in any means. You would be pretty shocked to see how our city employees, how we service you with the very decrepit facilities that we have. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Christina. And I wanted to make a small point that if we did store the ladder truck temporarily on 8th Street, which is kind of the southern end of our city, in the former tall fire building, it wouldn't be ideal, but it would be quite a bit closer to where we need it than the Presidio Monterey's fire engines, which for decades have been on General Jim Moore Boulevard, south of Light Fighter Drive. So not ideal, but it would be a step progress, even so. But at this time, I'd like to make a motion that we direct staff to prepare a scope of work to bring to council for up to 18 months of public outreach and surveys that are appropriate, and that staff prepare design plans and alternatives as they see fitting, and that we do include in that public outreach and surveys existing conditions, existing facility conditions.
I second.
Okay, so now brief comments. I think, Heidi, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's for brief comments or questions before we go to a motion. Is that correct, Heidi?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah, you just went to a motion.
we have a motion and a second. And now before we vote, everyone has a chance to make brief comments or brief questions. Go ahead. I'm so sorry. I'm watching Elizabeth Fisher, her to start speaking. Councilmember Elizabeth Fisher.
So Mayor, is it too late for me to just ask a question that I would have liked before the motion, or can I still do it?
Yep. Mhm.
Okay, it's more a remark, I guess, because I was still hoping, instead of focusing on the location next to the library that has been chosen 20 years ago and that at that point was the best location, I still am hoping that Marina can have a town square one day, and Cypress Knolls will offer enough space for that. And I know it's not perfectly centrally located, and I know that people in the older parts of Marina might be upset, but if the city is planning to at one point get East Garrison added, included in the city, then it would make more sense. So anyway, so my question is it still possible to discuss or look at that alternative location, or is it a done deal?
Great question, Lane.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. Nothing is a done deal until the council makes a final decision. Now, on January 7th, we are having a community charrette on Cypress Knolls. That'll be on Saturday from 1 till 4 o'clock, I believe. And that's a great opportunity for people to float those ideas up there at Cypress Knolls. But we certainly will keep an open mind. But we have looked at those areas previously, and it appears that the adjacent to the library is really good for a lot of different reasons. But we can certainly be open to ideas down the road. So nothing is set in concrete yet.
Thank you. I will be there January 7th. Thank you.
And the motion does ask staff to prepare appropriate designs and plans and alternatives. So it's a little bit flexible for that kind of thing. All right, let's go to Councilmember Brian McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor. I hadn't planned to make this comment because I thought it was maybe a little out of scope, but I appreciate Councilmember Fisher voicing her concerns, because I have long kind of had some concerns about the library location as well. And so I don't want to have an extensive conversation about that tonight, but just to share that I have heard some rumors about where those locations might be. I've actually not seen anything definitive, and maybe nothing definitive exists, but I do have some concerns and certainly reasons for those concerns that I'm happy to discuss with either staff or the fire chief. But yeah, I just kind of want to put that comment out on the table and probably leave it at that for now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. Okay, does anyone wish that I repeat the motion, or Anita, are you clear on it?
Yes, I'm clear on it.
Brian, your hand is up. Is that? Yeah. All right. I think then we're ready to go to a vote. Please, Anita.
Councilmember Fisher,
Yes,
Councilmember McCarthy,
Yes.
Councilmember Medina Dirksen,
Yes.
Mayor Delgado.
Yes. All right. Thank you, everyone. Now we're going to go to the pulled item of 10F1 previously. And Brian, you had some questions, so let's let you lead off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And actually, I promised my questions would be brief. And really, it is just with the item of the AMP board appointment. I have a strong interest in serving on that board, and I just wanted to ask Councilmember Medina Dirksen if she has any issues with maybe handing that over, or some other alternative solution. I don't know, Councilmember Medina, if you're extremely passionate about sitting on that board, or where you stand.
And one option would be that if Christina was willing, she could move to AMBAG and Brian could move to Access Monterey Peninsula. But it's up to you, Christina, at this time.
Through the mayor, I'm happy to do whatever Councilmember McCarthy would like to do. So whether it's an alternate on something that he's an alternate on, I think he was an alternate on the, I'm fine to, I think he'd be sort of great on AMP. I was looking at the alternate on the Convention Bureau. That was an interest of mine. But however you'd like to structure, I'm happy to serve.
Okay, and the Access Monterey Peninsula is a lot about improving Marina's presence on Access Monterey Peninsula. So we're hoping for someone who's eager to outreach with the public and get more programming that highlights what's going on in Marina. Yeah, so Brian, why don't you take the floor back?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm not super eager to give up AMBAG. I'd love to give that a try. I did have a question also about the mosquito abatement district that I noticed was with Nancy Amadeo. Is that a typo, or is that who's been holding that position in the last 2 years?
That is a position that once you get it, even though you're off council, you need to keep it. Obviously, if you pass away, you move out of the area. But I think it's accurate, Anita, that she has a 4-year term through 2026, but maybe it's not
That is
accurate.
accurate.
Okay. So that's one we rather not mess with, but if we had real heartburn over it, we could look into how we might change that.
I'm not looking to change it. I just thought if it was a typo, that might be something Councilmember Medina Dirksen might be interested in. But it sounds like it was not a typo.
Yeah. And I just talked to Nancy a couple days
Sorry,
ago.
Mayor, I just have a problem raising my hand.
Okay. Let me make one brief comment. I spoke with Nancy Amadeo a couple days ago, and she really wants to keep it. So, all right, let's go to Councilmember Christina Medina Dirksen.
Yeah, I'm so sorry about my inability to raise my hand. The only concern I have that one about is it's a paid position. It's a $50 versus Brian might be serving on one that is unpaid. So the mosquito abatement pays $50. And as everyone here knows, we're paid, what are we paying? Lane, $80 a meeting, is that correct?
Probably less than that, 200 a month. We're averaging 3 or 4 a month. You throw in all your other special meetings on top of that.
Let that be known to you 13 attendees.
You're more $5 or $2 a meeting.
And just a quick clarification, it's $100 a meeting at the mosquito abatement district.
So we are getting paid more at the mosquito abatement than we are for council.
It probably meets once a month, so less than council. Well, per meeting, yeah, that's true.
She may very well love it, but we're pennies here.
Lane, do you know if that's within our authority to change once we have someone for your term?
We'd need to look into that. Yeah, we would just have to look into that.
Okay.
It's
So
it's a lot easier when the term expires to make that decision before that, but after they've been appointed, we'd have to check into it.
So let's not look into it unless council thinks it's important to look into it.
I think we should look into it because I've never heard a report from the mosquito abatement, honestly. And if we're sitting here with more funds, I don't want to take it from her, but I've just never heard back from it, and it's kind of
Okay, well,
we do this because we love this kind of work. And
okay,
it's just a little insulting that they get more than we do. So I would like to see that come back to us.
Christina's suggestion would be that you can make a motion and include that as part of the motion, that staff look into it. And Christina, you're frozen and your audio wasn't perfect, so you might try taking off the video. But let's go to the public for
Yes, I
any
would.
questions they have here. Let's go to
I think having
anyone,
some-
please raise your hand if you'd like to speak to this appointment item. Give everyone another moment to raise your hand. Okay, not seeing anyone. We'll come back to council, close public comment. Would someone like, well, discussion or maybe we do a motion now? Heidi, can you help us out? What do we do now, Heidi?
I'm sorry, Mayor, what's the question?
What do we do now? Is it discussion or is it motion?
Well, what we're trying to do is just have brief questions go out for the public comment, then come back and have discussion. After the motion, you're also allowed to make a brief comment.
Okay, so we've had public comment and now we come back to council. Is it for a motion or is it for questions and comments?
Questions and comments.
Okay. So let's do that now, and I try to make it brief since we did have a lot of discussion already. Let's go to Councilmember Brian McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, I think Councilmember Medina Dirksen just dropped off. Hopefully she reattends. I guess what I would say just about the AMP board, I think you bring up a good point. Councilmember Medina Dirksen certainly has an expertise in reaching out to the community and doing those kind of things. I think AMP, and I haven't attended a meeting actually, but it's structured in such a way that I certainly could probably attend even if I'm not the city representative. So I'm not sold on really asking to take it from her, but I just didn't get the sense that she would mind either. So I would love to wait to vote until she pops back on and kind of see where she wants to go with that. Other than that, I'm very pleased with the appointments that you've made, and I think that you've put a lot of thought into them, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's looking at people's strengths and desires and trying to juggle that, because sometimes there's a position that more than one person might want. And sometimes a person seems like they're just perfect for it. So I try to keep that in mind. Christina Medina Dirksen, Brian was just talking about you as you were in between. Brian, can you repeat what you said for her benefit, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So essentially what I was saying is, I think AMP board meetings are structured in such a way that, the public can certainly attend, and I could attend even if I wasn't the rep. So I think it's really just, I guess, I don't really want to give up AMBAG because I think that that's kind of the one, kind of more meaningful regional board. And I would like to have sit on a board that has that kind of influence. But I guess I would ask Christina Medina Dirksen where she would like to go on the AMP board.
I'm fine with you taking the AMP board. I think you'd be great.
Okay. So then when it comes time to make a motion, I'd probably make a motion that I have that one switched over to me as well.
So AMP and AMBAG?
And AMBAG. And then I'm on the community services, housing services too. I don't know if you have an interest in taking that in return.
And that one is, let me just preface this, that this one is really important for unhoused and people in need. So we want some passion there. We haven't had a lot, really good representation in the past. So, yeah.
I'm not sure I have the bandwidth for that one.
I mean, it sounds like Councilmember Medina Dirksen, sorry, Mr. Mayor, is it okay if I take the floor? It sounds like she doesn't mind if I just take AMP as an additional board. And if that's the case, that's the motion that I would be likely to make and support.
Okay, so you or any other council member can make a motion. Let's go to Christina Medina. Your hand is still up, Christina. Do you have further input?
Yeah, I just want to say on the appointments, I'm completely and honored to be the mayor pro tem. So I want to say thank you. I have been completely focused on my community. I want to thank my family for giving me that bandwidth to do this. And that's probably one of the reasons I don't think that I can take on community human services. I'm working in a lot of regional ways and reaching across the aisle in some various manners from hospitality to chambers. And I'm really focused on bringing Marina to another level. So I just want to say sincerely, thank you, Mayor, for making that appointment. Kathy Biala has done a fantastic job, and I just look forward to learning and representing our city in the best light possible and highlighting us as we hit this next level, from everything from housing to water, all our regional issues. I'm really honored to take in this role, and I will do it to the best of my abilities. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Christina. Brian, your hand is up. Did you want to make a motion or have comment?
I can make a motion. I believe we went to public comment already. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the committee assignments as provided, with the exception of Councilmember McCarthy taking on the AMP board from Councilmember Medina Dirksen.
Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. My very brief comment regards the mayor pro tem. I think we have a really good council with lots of skills. I hope that we all do well in our roles. Regarding pro tem, I have a new priority the next couple of years. I would like to do better with staff communication, staff appreciation, and community volunteer appreciation. And Christina Medina Dirksen, Councilwoman, has already taken the initiative to be going to Salinas City Council meetings and interacting with staff on her own in appreciative ways, and texting myself and Lane almost on a daily basis with new ideas. She points out trainings that are available to council. So she really is taking the initiative to bring things together and outreach. And that's something that city staff, frankly, doesn't have a lot of bandwidth during a 40-hour work week when they're focused on projects. I don't want to say social butterfly in a negative way, but we need people focused on social outreach, social butterfly outreach. I try to do it, and Christina, and we all do it in our own way. But I think that Council Member Christina Medina Dirksen has taken it to a stronger level. So I really like to see that. And she was reaching out to me that she really wanted this, which showed me that she had some fire in her belly. And it was so for those reasons. And secondly, because we're already in so much communication, the mayor pro tem for me is very important, because that's my go-to number one person to communicate with. When I send the city manager emails, I always like to CC somebody, and I like that to be the mayor pro tem. So the mayor pro tem is as aware of everything I'm doing as that person can be. It's very difficult to farm out to different people, different issues, and remember how to avoid Brown Act violations. So having the one go-to person, Kathy will remain my go-to person on water issues. Her and I are on our subcommittee. Elizabeth is right there as a backup, and Brian, you're right there as backup as well. But for this new initiative that I want to take for staff and volunteer communication appreciation, Christina, I think, is already showing that that's where she's going as well. That wasn't very brief. I'm sorry. All right. So if we can have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Fisher,
Yes,
Councilmember McCarthy,
Yes.
Councilmember Medina Dirksen. You're muted, but okay. Mayor Delgado.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you, everyone. That motion passes 4-0 with those of us present. And we move on to something that is only meant to be addressed if we have a light agenda. And right now it's 8 o'clock. How about we take a 5-minute break? And then we'll come back to the last item on our agenda, which was up to a 30-minute discussion on basically whatever the council wants to talk about with some sideboard. So we'll see everyone at 8:15. our city council meeting with the last action item, which is giving us up to 30 minutes to provide staff with further direction. If we choose, we could just ask questions and get comments. So this is a trial where we have an open discussion about issues of concern. And because this is the first time, I have started us off with a list to choose from. And part of tonight can be adding to that list or deleting from that list so that next time we have a light agenda like we do tonight, we'll bring this right back with that augmented list. So let's do this. Let's democratically pick one topic that people would like to talk about first. And if we have time left before 30 minutes is up, we can either go to another topic or we can add to this list or take from this list, do a little bit of brainstorming. And then next time we'll have a chance to send staff in between next time, more items to put on the list. But anyway, let's get going and see how this open discussion works. We'll start with Councilmember Brian McCarthy. If you'd like to choose an item, Brian, or have other input right now, that'd be great.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, both. My input is this list kind of predicated on the 120 project priority list? I mean, is there some relation there? And if so, then I would choose maintenance of the 120 project priority list to be the first item to discuss.
Yeah, there's some overlap, but street sweeping, police chief hiring, might not be on that priority list. Status of deadlines, some of those deadlines might have related, probably most of them did relate to priorities, but maybe not. So it's a mixed bag there to answer the question. But if you want to choose that and there's no objection from Elizabeth or me, I wouldn't have objection to talking about any of these. Brian, is that the one you'd like to?
That would be my preference, yes.
Any objection, Elizabeth?
No objection, no.
Okay. All right, Brian, why don't you start off? I'm glad you picked it. It's really an important item.
Sure. So the great thing about this 120 priority list is that I know as a member of the public, before I was on council, I had a lot of input and I'm very appreciative of that. But of course, my input at that time was of a slightly different nature. And aside from that, fast forward 2 years and things have changed. So I fully recognize the how dangerous it can be, I guess, if you will, to change that list too drastically, or how that can create some problems for staff who's been trying to also manage that. But I'm very interested in having a more lengthy discussion about that list, maybe tweaking it a little bit if it's the will of the council, and just kind of having that discussion.
Okay, yeah, Brian, I think that every 2 years, because we have a new council, is the perfect time for that January, February timeframe, as it will be in 2023, to have a day and a half of us wrangling and thinking about all the priorities that we might choose from. So this is very timely, and it's especially because of you and Elizabeth joining the council. Things you wanted to delete or things you wanted to add to that 120 to make it 110 or make it 140 or 50 or whatever, that's all in the ballpark. And that's why we need you and Elizabeth to step in, and the other three of us continuing electeds to refresh, our minds and comments. So the sky is the limit on changing this. It was my anticipation that the January, February timeframe might be when staff tells us it's appropriate for them to open this up. I know that if we try to do it during the day and a half, there's a lot of things we wouldn't get done in that day and a half. But let me turn it over to Lane. And Lane, how do you see that day and a half overlapping, relating to this 120 project list?
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, this is probably a good time to have that discussion, because certainly in our retreat, the overriding goal of the retreat is to really discuss on a high level all the issues that the city is facing. And so we'll want to, as a baseline at the retreat, have a lot of information. This existing project list is one thing that you'd want to have. Our existing capital improvement program, our existing budget, we have all types of lists in the budget, and this 120 is an additional list. Prior to last year's retreat, we actually did a survey and sent that out to the community and asked them ahead of time what are the issues that they see in the community or their concerns, and got a sense from them of what their priorities were, and then we brought that to the retreat. So there's a lot of different things, but overall the retreat, we want to analyze and look at where we are in the city, and the end result is I want direction from the council on what are your priorities. As I put together the budget by our city charter, I have a responsibility to put the budget together and present it to the council. And prior to present it to the council, I want to have some direction on what your priorities are, so that as I work with our departments and our staff and putting that budget together, that we are addressing your top priorities. Now, we always seem to get bogged down, and a couple years ago, we brought in a consultant, Marilyn Snyder, to help us walk through this process, and she said, look, as an organization, you only have the bandwidth to really focus on 6 or 7 priorities within your budget year. And so we went through that process with her, and we established these 6 or 7 priorities. And then after that process was done, then we went back to council. I said, well, you have all these other priorities that you'd set out, and none of them were in those priorities that came out from that budget process that process with Marilyn Snyder. Then so council said, well, no, we don't want those. We want to do a hybrid or combine them. And so it kind of shows the difficulty. And I think this is what the mayor is talking about. In a day and a half, it's really hard to sit down and say, okay, we've analyzed all the issues and the problems in the community, and these are our priorities. But we try to accomplish that as much as we can in a retreat. One of the things that we typically do that we didn't do last time is ahead of time, I'll have all our departments go through and prepare a presentation on what their issues and what their needs and what their problems are in their departments. And so that's a perspective that we give to the council. And then ultimately, we're looking for in direction. Now, one of the things in this 120, and it's larger than that now, and I don't know if priority list is the right word because they're not priorities. And but as I've talked with the mayor and some people about what it is, it puts all these things on a list so things don't get forgotten. And so as we come back to the retreat, you go through the list again and you say, okay, yeah, and you may want to add things, or you may want to say, okay, yeah, we don't want this on the list, but at least it's a good reference point that you have this information, so that as we go through our retreat process, we end up with priorities that on my end that I can focus on getting the budget put together. But then you may end up with a separate list and say, okay, these are a separate list of projects that we want to keep out here. And as we get resources or staffing available, you may want to address that. Like in our actual budget document, I think we have, I think it's like on the 3rd page of our budget, and it lists 12 top priorities in there, and we don't need to pull that up. We don't need to pull it, just keep that exist there. And so we have a lot of different lists, and I think that's part of the problem is we have these lists. We have the list of our urgent mandatory list, these other things, but we'll try to work through that process in the retreat. And it's a lot to accomplish in a day and a half. And the retreat is just a starting point. As we go through the budget process, we'll have various different study meetings, and we'll have as many as we need, so that come end of May, we'll have a budget that we can present to the council and then really start going through our formal budget hearing process and refine that document at that point. Does that kind of answer that question a little bit?
That answers it for me. Yes, thank you.
Okay. I'm hoping that staff department directors will take a look at the list, and those that are coming from their department, let's say Del Monte Boulevard medians. Obviously, that's primarily a public works project. So I would like the public works department, somebody in that department, to give 1 or 2 sentences what that project is, a description, and give a very ballpark estimate. Is it $10,000? Is it $100,000? Is it $1 million? And fill out the different columns that are attached to the row of Del Monte Boulevard landscape median, because the departments know best. Right now, we had elected officials, myself and Kathy Biala, do our best to explain the project, estimate the project, just as a placeholder to fill in the table, the project list. But it would be best if that table was refined by the people who know most about the subject. And although we have 120 projects, the top 6 that are ranked and prioritized make it a priority list. So number 1 is more important than number 2, is more important than number 3. We did a lot of effort between council and staff to come up with the priority list prioritized of those 120. And it was important to staff and to everybody else, I think, that we understood the difference between which projects are mandatory or urgent, almost like must do, versus those would be nice. Put a bridge across Lock Padden Lake, where we used to have a walking bridge across the lake. Obviously not mandatory or urgent. And so before we went down that path, we probably want to give a serious look at those urgent or mandatory items, especially those at the top of the list, knowing that opportunities would come along or we would have forgotten some things. As far as the capital improvement project list, that should be included and was a late addition, which caused the project number to go from like 107 to 120. And so there might be other things that staff is aware of that belong on that list. That's the benefit of the list. It's the best updated list we've got. As we come up with things we forgot, we put them at the bottom, and the next time we prioritize everything, those things that are at the bottom might move to the very top or somewhere else in the middle. Keeping the lights on doesn't go on the priority list. Police and fire shifts don't go on the priority list. These 120 projects are sort of non-traditional new things that we might want to focus on, like street sweeping. If it's just continue as we have, that wouldn't be on the list. But if it was establish a parking sign to get people off their streets so their streets could be properly cleaned, that would be new. That would require new staff time and money. That would have to then be folded into the project list. Yes, it gets on the list, but where in the list it's prioritized is up to us at the retreat or before the retreat or after the retreat, depending on how we line that up. But this project list is prioritized. You go to the top, you see the most important things. It is divided between mandatory, urgent, which kind of make that a priority piece. And then there's things that are not mandatory or urgent. And they were also divided in different ways. So what I just said was one comprehensive list, but there are other lists that take subsets of that big list and put them into budget buckets. So stuff that's general fund, we see which ones come out of the general fund, or other funds, airport funds, or other funds. But the master list had everything in it, including a column saying which fund it belonged to. So you can look at the master list, see all the projects in one place, where their bucket of financing came from, or you could go to a segregated list and just look at the general fund or just the mandatory urgent or whatever other sub list that we took from the master lists. So I think it was a lot of work. We haven't used it to its full utility, but we've only had it for a year and a half or so. And I think it's going to make things easier in the future to add on to this list than to create it, or try to keep in mind what all these 120 directions are and not have to do a brand new sticky, put your sticky circles on the projects you think are most important as a new brainstorm issue process every time that we have a retreat. All right, let's go to anyone else who would like to speak on this matter. Let's go to Councilmember Elizabeth Fisher.
Sorry, yeah, just a simple question. Is the list available to the public? I don't even know. Can we find it on the website or I don't think so, eh?
I think it's on the website, but let's ask Matt and Lane.
Yeah, it is available to the public. We've put out several times. One of the things that we are doing now that we're hiring a new human resource director, I've assigned Matt the responsibility of this list, and so he's going to reformat it and put it in different categories, put some information in, and all these different points that Mayor had brought up. We're going to put it in a list and make it more available and accessible and readable and understanding. And then our goal is to bring this to the retreat, as the mayor said, and so we aren't recreating it from ground zero. And so Matt is going to do that, and part of that is to keep that updated, so we can regularly come back to the council and say, okay, this is where we are, and what do we need to readjust, and at the same time keep the public aware. The amazing thing is it's not so much what we're not doing, but we're doing so much, and the public and the council often is not aware all the different things that are going on, and until we can really keep that updated and get that to you, you don't really know all that. So Matt is going to take on that new responsibility, and so we're excited to work on that and get that in a better position to get back to the council and the public.
But thank you. So would it be possible to have it on the website? I know it has been shared several times, but it can be hard to find if it was in an agenda packet or.
Yeah, but we can do that.
Yes, then it's easier for me to find as well. But thank you. Thank you. And I know that lots of things are being done and you never see it, have anything to show for it. So that's why some people like to make to-do lists, even for the things they already did, so you can scratch it off. So, but thank you.
All right, and I would be surprised if it's not on our website, but Matt, did you have input at this time?
I was going to point out that if you go to our website and you look at the mega menu under City Hall, and you go all the way over to the right, you'll find consolidated project list under projects and initiatives. And that's where it currently is. I can't guarantee you this is the absolute latest version. That's something we'll follow up on tomorrow and make sure that's correct.
Thank you. I'll look for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Councilmember Christina Medina, Mayor Pro Tem Christina Medina Dirksen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are we going to go through these? 1, 2,
If we have time, right now, we're working on the project list. And as soon as we're done with that, we'll take a time check. We only have a few minutes left, so I don't think we'll get to another issue.
Okay, just because the project list hit a question on one of them?
Yeah, so let's finish the 120 project list.
Okay, that's good.
Is there any more comment on that? Okay, Heidi, how do we work public comment? Is it required on non-action items, or is this an action item if we're providing staff with further direction?
Mayor, I think it's always a good idea to solicit public comment when you're providing direction, because in my opinion, that is taking some action. So you could do it toward the end of discussion because there's a number of items, or you could do it at the outset.
Okay. Yeah, someone give me a time check. We started at about 8:10, so we're going to go to 8:40. What time is it now?
Yes, we started at, I think 8:10, so we're at 8:30 right now, roughly.
Okay. Let's go to public comment, and Everyone, let's keep your comments to 90 seconds. Just so that we don't go past the 30-minute rule here. Does anyone wish to speak to our this issue, especially the priority list? All right, let's go to Karen Anderson. Welcome back, Karen.
Thank you, Mayor Delgado. My quick question was, when's the retreat? I missed that. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Let's go to Denise Turley. Welcome back, Denise.
Question, thanks.
I'm sorry, Denise, I couldn't hear you.
Same question, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Denise. Okay, we'll give everyone a moment to raise their hand, and then we'll close public comment. Okay, let's close public comment and come back to council. Does anyone have any direction that they'd like to give staff? If so, we will turn that into a motion, or maybe do it by consensus. And then we'll ask staff if they need any other input from us on this priority project, this project list. Then Lane, why don't you summarize for us where we go with this list? Like, you kind of already talked about Matt taking it over, but what are the next steps?
So we're gonna clean it up and reorganize it and get it to the council, and we'll make sure it's updated on the website. But we're going to use this as a framework as we start our retreat process. And I think prior to the retreat, we're going to give a bunch of background materials in advance, so the council, you'll have time to look at it. And one of those will be, we'll get you this list well in advance, so that you'll have it, and it can be a basis as we look at the priorities that we want to set moving forward for our next 2-year budget.
And anyone that has ideas about this, as you know that Matt's picking it up, feel free to email Matt and talk to him about it, or Lane. Let's go to Christina Medina Dirksen. You want to go to another issue?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I looked at this list and I was looking at the security plan for the Marina Equestrian Center, one of the things that struck me as needing a point of discussion is where we are with the Equestrian Center, the Marina Equestrian Association, a move to possibly accommodate a new area for them. And the other one was, I didn't see this on here, was there's a police chief hiring process. However, we've been without a rec director for the 29th will mark at least a year. So I wanted to add that to where we are with some just general updates.
Okay, so let me ask Heidi, a new facility for the MEA is not on the list, and the rec director is not on the list. So do we add these to the list for next time, or can we address them tonight?
Well, through the mayor, in the staff report, it just mentions an initial short list, which can be modified with additions or deletions from council. So I think that allows you to make modifications as needed tonight.
Okay, so let's add the Marina Equestrian Association's potential new location in Marina, and also add status of the rec director. So why don't you take it from there, Mayor Pro Tem? Any questions on one item? And then if we finish with time left, we'll get to the second item.
Okay, does that mean to start with number 1, police chief hiring process?
No, it means, no. Start with the issue that you want to go to next.
Of the 2 that I mentioned?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. I guess I posed the question to our city manager. Can you please provide us an update with the status of the chaparral arrangement and what, if anything, is being done? You mentioned a consultant the other day. Can you tell me a little bit about what direction you have provided to staff about accommodating possibly horse boarding in our city?
Sure, thank you.
Is there a consultant out there that you're considering? Are we going to see that? What's that going to cost? And what's the scope of work being proposed?
Yeah, there is a bunch of different parts moving here. So the Marina Equestrian Association has now vacated the Equestrian Center. We have been working with them on storing temporarily some of their fences and equipment on the city property. They've moved their horses to temporary locations. We've hired a consultant to help us working with them. We have an identified site that's right next to the Equestrian Center. It's kind of around where the Los Animas cement facilities are down there. It's 3 acres and it's a nice parcel. There's a lot of existing subleases that were entered into by Fora that we are in the process of providing them notices that they need to vacate those properties. And our consultant will be working with the MEA on what they would need, how we'd want to design the site so they can bring horses back there. It would be in a phased process. We need to look at utilities, what are needed, how we're going to get those. And our consultant is on board. And if you need more detail, Brian can provide that. But we are excited about possibilities. Once we know a little bit more, we'll be coming back to the council on what type of agreement or arrangement that we would have for that property with the MEA. But the first part is just to work with them on the design, exactly what's needed, how much that's going to cost, and that's moving forward. Anything more to add on that, Brian?
I think the question was how much. The initial their scope of work is to look at short-term and long-term plan, because it's probably going to be a phased-in plan. There can be something probably done more kind of a temporary standing up of corral or pens for horses and for stabling them there while the more permanent stables are built. So be working with the consultant and MEA on kind of that phased-in approach. But it's their work, Baker Tilly's work is going to be at a time and materials basis. So we only reimburse them for actual hours expended on the work and analysis, with the initial contract limit of 24,500. And then they have the contract in hand. They've already reviewed the terms. So we're probably expect to see the signature coming back from them before we go on the winter break here. Already scheduled a meeting with them and MEA, I believe, on January 9th. That we'll first sit down and talk through the process.
Really quickly, 24,500, you said?
Yes, that's a not to exceed. So
This is the first time hearing about it. Is there a threshold before it comes to us?
Right. Yeah. Contracts. If we have sufficient funds, I have authority to approve contracts, and so I've already approved that one with Baker Tilly. And again, it's on a time and materials, and so we don't think it's going to be anywhere near that. But the contract is up to that amount.
Last question. Do they have experience dealing with horses or any sort of, or are they just general contract experts?
Their engagement manager, his former manager of Seaside, was there when they went through their I forget what they called it, Forward Downs or something, when they were going through that whole process there. So he's familiar with equestrian operations and those types of things.
But the critical part of this is we're working directly with the MEA, who are our equine experts on the horses. And so this isn't just a consultant saying, okay, this is how we're going to do it. It is working with MEA, who's experts on that, and saying, this is what we need. This is how we want to design it. This is how we need to move forward. And so it's a very collaborative process with MEA.
And MEA knows that it's Baker Tilly. They're familiar with their work, and they recognize that they should do well with the equestrian aspects.
All right.
Thank you.
Christina, I don't want to get in the way of the progress you're making on this initiative, but it does bring up the point of our project list. And our project list includes the RFP for the Equestrian Center, which is now behind us, but it didn't include an alternate site for the Equestrian Center. So as staff spends productive time on this toward a good cause, they can't do something else at the same time. And so there's some other project on the priority list that won't get as much time because they only have so much time, because this is a new project and the council wasn't asked and didn't direct staff to modify our project list to put this on it, do it, and maybe not get to something else that they were thinking of starting or are already engaged. So I don't want to make a beef about this other than to say this is the kind of planning and purpose of the project list, so that we all understand that if something new that we put on the list probably means that something else that's already there drops down, and we need to consider that before we saddle staff with new project ideas, or as we come up with them. That's why it's good to have a comprehensive address and a comprehensive product, and then that's our marching orders. But as things come up, those marching orders can be adjusted. It's ideal if council gets a bite at the apple to make sure that council and staff are on the same page to modify that list and to keep council and the public aware of what's going on. New project, no longer, or a deleted project, or a new project. Okay, anyone else with input on this matter? All right, how are we doing on time? We're just about it. Okay, so Christine, I'm sorry that your next item and Elizabeth, we're out of time. So this was just to take advantage of a light agenda, but I guess Heidi, it probably would be within our council discretion to keep going. But let me ask you about that first, since the staff report says up to 30 minutes and we're there now.
Well, again, just looking at the staff report, it's a recommendation by staff that council not spend more than 30 minutes on this list.
All right. Well, I think it was a good first approach. And if council would wish to next time put this 60 minutes or as long as we want to go the given night, this is not in stone. It was just the first shot because I knew we had a light agenda. So I thought we could get something done, and we don't often have the chance to just have an open discussion like we just did tonight on issues that we find important. Okay, so we're going to move on to kind of the housekeeping items. Number 14, the Mayor's Association met for just an informal Christmas party, but no business was conducted. But we do have an important meeting coming up January 6th, first Friday in January, and everyone's willing to able to attend if you wish to see what happens at these lunches. They're public meetings, they're Brown Act meetings, and I think they're good meetings, especially to meet the 12 mayors and sometimes their city managers. But anyway, next meeting is first Friday in January. It's going to appoint mayors to different positions. I'm interested in getting on a list for the California Coastal Commission. And so that process might begin on January 6th, but there's other appointments to be made to LAFCO and other boards. Sometimes they're restricted to South County. Sometimes they're restricted to Salinas Valley. Sometimes they're restricted to the Monterey Peninsula as far as who can serve in those positions. So it's a little bit complicated, but this next meeting will be making some assignments. All right, so now we'll move to 14B, council reports on meetings, conferences attended. I'll start. Christina Medina Dirksen and Anita has reminded me that you will be starting as pro tem in January. I thought it was tonight, but January 2023 is when the transition of mayor pro tem occurs.
What's the date on that? January what?
January 2023, you're officially mayor pro tem.
At
Okay,
midnight.
that mean I get new cards? Just kidding.
Is that Anita? Is that January 1st?
Yes.
January 1st. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Does anyone have any reports on meetings or conferences that they attended?
Mayor,
Yes.
does today's Joby meeting have room? Would you
Perfect.
like to report back on that?
Joe, go ahead.
Okay. I'm not sure if I mentioned the DART symposium a few weeks ago, but an offshoot was a regional, I would say a Monterey County actually, multi-jurisdictional effort to be informed of Joby Aviation's needs and where we are on the various levels of working together to keep them here or the roadmap for challenges that they're now facing. So there was a meeting today with everyone from PG&E because they have vast energy needs to county entities and Assembly Member Robert Rebus's office, who is going to be the Speaker of the what is it? The Speaker of the, what's this? Help me out here. It's going to be the
Speaker
Speaker
of the Assembly.
The Assembly. Just the various entities that need to be engaged to understand what the big picture looks like, and there's a lot of challenges in place. So we hope to meet on the regular to sort of pull our efforts to work together to see that this very promising business has what it needs and whether it is right for our region. It was a quite engaging meeting to see the big processes that, you know, the state says that it wants businesses here, but unfortunately the reality is that California business climate is not always the most easy to work with, and especially with a governor that may not see the big picture. So we're all hoping to take a regional approach to be of assistance to a business that is going to provide a lot of jobs and a lot of promise to diversify our economic engine here. Is that good, Mayor?
Yeah, and I'll add that cut to the quick, the governor priorities fit this perfectly. It's green, it's manufacturing, it's cutting edge, it's aviation. And Joby is frustrated because the governor vetoed 2 bills that would have assisted businesses that are green, aviation, and manufacturing. So it's totally consistently in line with a couple of the governor's main priorities, but they're not feeling the love or the support when it comes to legislation intended to help companies like Joby. There were 35 people on the call of various agencies. It was led by Josh Metz of DART. Lane, what does DART stand for, or Matt?
It's a drone, has to do with drones.
Automation, robotics, and a T, something with a T in it.
Probably technology. So drone, aviation, and robotics, automation, robotics, technology, something like that, about drones. And so DART is the acronym for the nonprofit, I guess, that Josh Metz is the executive director, along with Larry Samuels, who was recently the director of business and operations or business administration at the CSUMB, no longer with CSUMB. And a lot of the time, it was about an hour, was 2 Joby Aviation employees, George Kevork and Dan Coughlin, running down all the impediments in California that don't exist elsewhere. So in other states, they're getting up to $150 to $200 million incentive packages. Here, it's like near zero. Other states have 20,000 homes being built every year. Here, they have to fight for every home that's affordable for their employees. And right now they have, I think, 250 employees. If they go production, which is what we're hoping, and what the request for proposal is out for, they're going to have 1,200 to 2,500 employees. The business climate here is full of regulations. The FAA here is harder to get approvals than the FAA in other states. Other states, the housing costs are lower, the labor pools are bigger, the labor pools are more experienced, and so they can get their workers easier over there. in other states. So there's a lot of disadvantages around costs to us being in California. Heidi, go ahead.
Mayor, I was just going to clarify that this part of the agenda is really for a report on a meeting attended, and I didn't want the council to get caught up in a discussion.
Right. So I was just running through, and I'll stop now, what was discussed by the Joby employees in this meeting today. It was pretty daunting. Okay. Anyone else?
I do have one more.
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to say we attended the CSWMB Christmas invitation from the president, Vanya Quinones, and that was last Thursday, I believe, last Friday. Looking forward to working very closely with her. She's very engaged with learning more about Marina and how we can collaborate.
And in that meeting, I had a really frank or a good conversation with Congressman Panetta regarding Joby. And I know that staff has been meeting with Congressman Panetta this past week or these last several days. So it sounds like that's going in a good direction. Lane, do you have anything you'd like to say about your meetings with Congressman?
No, but we really appreciate Mayor you getting that introduction and getting us connected with his staff. And Matt and I have had several follow-up and really good discussions with his staff and are going to continue. So thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Christina.
I'm so sorry. I just haven't had so many meetings lately. I met with Brad Barbeau, who is one of the directors of the DART program, the Center for Innovation and Technology at CSUMB. And that is another collaboration we're looking to pursue with vigor. They've got a lot of ideas coming out of CSUMB, and we as a city can support them in a big way. So I've been busy.
Great, Christina, thank you. Okay, if there's nothing else, then we will be adjourned. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, happy solstice. That's my favorite of all.
Thank you to Richard Cox, who was here as our acting commander. Did he leave? He's here.
He's still here.